Hello everyone, I'm Daz and welcome to American Civil War and UK History Podcast. This presentation is available as a video on our YouTube channel or as a podcast from wherever you get your podcast from. And if you're watching on YouTube, remember to hit the subscribe button and give us a big thumbs up. And to keep up to date with everything American Civil War and UK history, check out our website where you find blog posts, podcasts and links to all of our social media pages. The link is available in the podcast description. And joining me today is fellow co-founder of Monuments for UK Veterans of the American Civil War Association, Gina Denham. Welcome, Gina.
Hi, Daz. Nice to catch up with you again. We haven't spoken online for a while, have we?
No, we haven't. And because we've been on our summer holidays. But anyway, on the 4th of October 2025, we will host another dedication. And I believe it is our maybe 6th and 7th.
Isn't it good that we're actually starting to lose count? Because I did that one.
Yeah.
I did two last year, didn't I? I did one, the one in Brighton for John Heath, and then the one for James Henry Cleggett in Chicago, because I flew out to Chicago to get our plaque for the memorial, the monument, the monument that we're fundraising for. So yeah, it's got to be about the seventh one, but of course, obviously, this one is extra special.
Exactly. So again, it is described, as Gina has said, it is special because it's described as a historic double dedication. And the reason it's historic, we'll get into a little bit later and Gina can explain. But again, the dedication is going to be, we're going to be dedicating two veterans. One is called Samuel Lander Hough and his good friend, Henry McGuinness. Yeah. Okay, then let's start. When did you first find out about these two guys?
Right. Probably, obviously I'm doing research for my third book, which is solely about the London branch of American Civil War veterans. So I guess it's probably going to be Samuel Lander Hough first off. I didn't initially realise that he was a member of the London branch of American Civil War veterans. That wasn't until I found his name mentioned in a 1928 article that was submitted by Arthur Smith, who was the then secretary of the London branch, and Sam Howe was mentioned as among them. More recently, I found out that Sam was the 124th member of the London branch because I managed to find two member rolls from 1920 and 21. And then, of course, I then established through that cold case investigation work that Sam appears in several photographs with the London branch. And so you've got a newspaper, the images that you see there, Daz, you've got Sam Howe on the right, which is from some Derby, I think it's called the Derby Telegraph. And then on the left, at best guess, and this will always be at best guess, that you can see what the person I think is Henry McGuinness. And just behind, you've only got half his face in the top sort of right-hand corner is Sam Howe. Now, that photograph on the left came from July 4th, 1916. And the London branch held a reunion banquet at the YMCA in Tottenham Court Road. And they said that they were welcoming two veterans from the Midlands. Well, it could only be Sam Howe, and I suggest probably Henry McGuinness because you can see Sam Howe in the picture. And it would make sense to me that Henry McGuinness would have gone down with Sam. So yeah, when did I? So Sam Howe definitely was the first of the two that I became aware of, and that was been within the last couple of years as our general work to document all those veterans that we know died in the UK.
Okay, thank you. And we are going to talk about Samuel Lander Hough now. And again, as I said earlier at the beginning, the reason it's historic because he is, as far as we know, the last UK veteran to pass away.
Yeah, definitely.
But you're going to tell us a little bit about his story. So I'd love to know a little bit about his early life first.
Okay, so he was born in Ford Street in Derby, and his father was I struggle with my R's. His father was a wheelwright, and in 1850, when Sam was just 2 years old, he had a 32-day journey from England across the Atlantic to the United States, where the family settled. And eventually, I think they initially went to Brooklyn, and then they went across and settled by 1861. His father's in New Jersey, or sorry, 1860s in New Jersey. I think he's got an estate worth about $2,000 and a personal wealth of $800. So he's doing well. His father's doing well. And of course, Sam, by this stage, is still on the 1860 American census, but he's 12 years old at this stage. He's a scholar, but his status isn't listed on the 1860 census. So he's now in America, 12 years old.
Okay, so as we know, the American Civil War starts in 1861, so he's
Yep.
13 when it starts, but he is going to enroll in the Union Cavalry, isn't he? So tell us
Yeah.
about what you know and what you found out about his enlistment.
Yeah, well, one of Sam's campfire tales were very, very similar to many of the other London branch and lots of other veterans that we found. They like to embellish their story. Now, Sam, I'd love to confirm it, and sadly, we can't find Sam's pension file. It's lost somewhere in the United States. It exists, but it's not in Washington, D.C. But what I can tell you, Sam enlisted. So he reckoned he served at Gettysburg. Well, obviously, unless he went in, he's enlisting and fighting when he's 15 years old. It's impossible. But he did enlist on the 8th of September, 1864, at Morristown, which is in New Jersey, in the 2nd New Jersey Cavalry. Now, he got $100 bounty, which I worked out the other day is the modern equivalent of about £2,000. Not too bad for a 16-year-old who lied about his age and said he was 18. So, do you want me to carry on? Just keep
Yes,
going?
please.
Yeah,
Yes, please.
okay. Well, he joined the 2nd New Jersey Cavalry, and they were armed with those Spencer repeating carbines. And I will say to you, Dad, that when I worked there, so it just when you and I were at Chalk History Festival this year, and you were going through the rifle drill with a lot of we were obviously really busy at Chalk, weren't we? And it really, pardon the pun, rammed it home for me when we were doing that rifle drill about the limitations of a muzzle loading, weapon that 3 rounds a minute, the loading 9 times and all of that. And then, of course, Sam gets his state-of-the-art weapon called dispenser repeating carbine, and you've got a picture of it there, 20 rounds per minute compared to a muzzle loading 3 rounds a minute. So it's a game changer, really. So so he's got that rifle. I'm going to carry on as we go down the slide, and we can't, because we can't find his pension file. We can only find his service file. This is all best guess stuff. We know I've got obviously the records of where he was, etc. So by December 1864, he's down in Mississippi, and a lot of the work down there was to disrupt the Confederacy on the Mobile and Ohio Railroad network that was down there. And of course, when they were armed with these Spencer repeating rifles, Spencer carbines, I think this really helped their situation. So, what's your next slide? I'll be interested because, obviously I can carry on telling you, right, there you go. Well, perfect. So, in his remembrances, Sam talked about that he served at Gettysburg. So let's park that one because we obviously can't confirm that there. And so I'm not going to dishonor him by saying he didn't. I just can't prove or disprove that he did. However, without doubt, he served at Egypt Station. And one of the things, obviously, for you, Daz, I suppose I always credit you in knowing more about the Civil War than I actually do because I'm always interested in like the human story. Egypt Station, when I learned about what happened at Egypt Station, which is just a footnote in the Civil War story, lost in the narratives of Gettysburg, Fredericksburg, Antietam, you name it. who's heard of Egypt Station? If your followers have heard of it, then great. But Egypt Station is where Sam served, and that battle occurred on the 28th of December 1864, and Sam arose. It was they didn't experience a lot of rain, but Sam woke on quite a crisp and clear morning, and their General Grierson, Brigadier General Grierson, determined that they were going to attack a Confederate train located at Egypt Station, and they got intelligence the night that there was a train coming in at about 11 o'clock on the 28th of December with more Confederates. So Grierson determined that they were going to do an early morning attack, and sure enough, that's what they did. Now, I've got some letters of some people who participated in that particular action at Egypt Station. So I don't know if you want me to read them.
Yes, please.
Okay. Well, this one's quite long, but I'm going to give a shout out to a good friend of the Monumental Project, and that's William Griffin of the Spared and Shared Facebook page and website. Will Griffin has really helped us out with lots of stuff, because his website is just a fantastic place where you can just kind of look at a regiment and see if anybody's written any letters. And sure enough, this morning I found this letter from a guy who joined in the same year as as in Sam Howe. And he wrote about his friend called Thomas Alston, who was injured in that Egypt Station attack. So this is history, and he wrote this letter back in January 1865. And he was writing to the mother of his friend Thomas. So he said, "I take the responsibility to write to you of a slight misfortune that has befallen your son. The 20th of December, we started on an expedition down in the state of Mississippi for the purpose of destroying railroads to hinder the operation of Hood's army. We penetrated down in the state along the line of the Charleston and Ohio Railroad to Egypt Station, where we met the enemy to the number of 700 to 900, and a battle ensued immediately. We made 3 charges before we could make any impression upon their lines. In the 3rd charge, just in the last of the fight, and on the very moment of a gallant victory, your son received a ball in the side, a little above the left hip, but thank God, not so as to endanger his life. I helped him to a temporary hospital where there was a surgeon in attendance, and saw him in bed when I left him for a short time. I soon returned to him just as our regiment was leaving, and asked him how he felt. He wasn't in much pain and was in good spirits." Now, the letter goes on, it talks about him, but what I find quite incredible is that this attack at Egypt Station was against the 10th Tennessee. Now, I didn't know much about the 10th Tennessee. What I find, as I say, is so incredible is the 10th Tennessee were recruited by a guy called Michael Burke, who was an Irishman who was born in Galway. And at the beginning of the Civil War, he was down in, I believe, New Orleans. And obviously he joins the South. And so Michael Burke has gone into places like Andersonville. And I think what resonates with me, Daz, is that you and I have gone to Point Lookout, that horrific Civil War POW camp. Well, obviously, your followers are going to know about the horror of Andersonville. So Michael Burke has gone into Andersonville and places like that, and basically recruited not former, but Union prisoners of war, and said, look, come and serve the South, and now you get an alternative to death and disease in this POW camp. I don't know what you would do, Daz. Who are we to judge these people? But this is the problem. So, as it turned out, some of the valuable intelligence that came into the 2nd New Jersey camp occurred the night before when 6 defectors from the skirmish line at Egypt Station came to camp and said, look, we are former Union soldiers that have been forced to serve the South. When you attack us in the morning, you're going to find that there's not going to be much resistance. They're going to drop the Union men amongst these Southerners are going to drop their muskets, and it's going to be great. Well, clearly, it never happened like that. You've got William's aunt's William. So it's ARNDT. If your followers want to find him. So William Arndt, he was in Company K of the 2nd New Jersey, and he's describing this experience where they made 3 charges. And that doesn't suggest to me that they captured about 500 men at Egypt Station after the battle was done. And it was a fierce battle. And 100 of those veterans, at least, and I've followed this story up because I find it fascinating. Never even conceived the idea. Now, obviously, people have heard of galvanized Yankees, of Confederates who were who joined, swore allegiance back to the Union, but they were sent to the West and, fought in the Indian Wars in the West. But I'd never heard of galvanized Confederates until within the last couple of days. This is what I find fascinating. So Sam Howe, is the last veteran of the Civil War that we know to die in the UK. But he's, one of his particular distinctions is this incredible battle that takes place at Egypt Station. So of the 500 casualties, at least 100 of them were former Union soldiers. So you've got people like Martin Buzzard, who had previously served in the 2nd Pennsylvania Cavalry, Elias Bear, 87th Pennsylvania Infantry, Peter Knapp, 5th Iowa Infantry, John McFarland of the 64th Ohio, just 4 people amongst these people are captured. And the fact that after the Civil War, these men tried to claim their pensions. Now, there was some leniency shown to the 6 men who came into that camp and offered valuable intelligence. Of these POWs, after the Battle of Egypt Station, they were sent north under guard. They went up to Cairo, Illinois, and eventually they were given the options, very much like the galvanized Yankees, to go and fight in the West. So they went out to Indian country as well. I don't know what you make of it, Daz. I've been thinking about this a lot because, there's a lot of judgment. If you wear blue, you're a good person. And if you wear grey, you're a bad person. Well, never judge a book by its cover. I mean, who are we to judge these men that that served the South as an alternative to dying in places like Andersonville? I find it a fascinating story. There's an author, I can't remember his name, but he's done a recently published work, and his research suggests that at least 4,000 Union soldiers, servicemen, changed sides and served the South. So Sam Howe, won the day. They survived Egypt Station, earned that battle honours, etc. I don't know whether he knew that some of the people that caused the death and injuries at Egypt Station. So from memory, I think it was about 74 killed or wounded at Egypt Station. It wasn't just a brief skirmish. This was, a full-blown attack. And as this guy says, William Arndt, they made 3 charges. I don't know. Over to you, Dad. What do you make of it?
Yeah, well, it's fascinating to find out that information because, again, I didn't really ever conceive that.
No, it's definitely sat with me the last couple of days. I love this.
Very interesting, this.
Well, yeah, I love the Monumental Project. I love the fact that I find out things that these veterans, people like Sam Howe, Henry McGuinness, lead me to. You told me when we went to Virginia last year that, how much of the Civil War was fought there. Trust in Daz. It's a great phrase, trust in Daz, because, how much, as I go forward and learn about, Henry McGuinness's service, and I know we're going to probably cover him in a bit, Fredericksburg, Petersburg, Cedar Creek, all these places, and they were just names on a bit of paper. But when you start writing about these people and these, become almost like your friends as you're writing about them. I know Sam Howe very well now, and I'm really looking forward to this dedication that we can really give him that. But when you and I stand at his grave on the 4th of October, I'm going to be thinking about Egypt Station. I'm going
Yeah.
to be thinking about those turncoat Union men who potentially were killing his comrades that day on the 28th of December, 1864. So
Yeah.
there you go. That's my takeaway from that one, Dad.
And I was going to add something there, and my brain's gone dead. Sorry. 1 minute.
Okay. Would you
Gonna
just
say.
when we were honouring John Heath
Oh
in
yeah,
my
that's what I was going to say.
go
I was
on.
going to say it's nice that we're honouring. Um, Again, nothing against the Navy, but the majority of our British guys are in the Navy,
Yeah,
and so it's nice to see something different. Like
yeah,
somebody in the cavalry, somebody in the infantry,
yeah,
and I know George served in both, but it is nice to
yeah,
see the other side of the story
yeah,
sometimes as well.
exactly. Yeah,
But yeah, it's fascinating. So,
indeed it is.
so okay, so his Civil War experience comes to an end
Pretty much, yeah. I
soon, though,
mean,
doesn't it? So
yeah,
tell us about that.
he goes to New Orleans. Is that going to be Vicksburg? You
That is
test him.
Vicksburg, yeah.
Oh, have I passed the test?
That,
So Sam Howe, this is what I like about this, Daz. So, my personal connection to this. So after Sam, they finish up at Egypt Station. They spend time in New Orleans. They spend time at Spanish Fort and Fort Blakely. Well, as you know, that the USS Chickasaw tried to have some skin in that game by going up the river from Mobile to get involved in that. But from my memory, the Chickasaw's guns in there, they couldn't get the correct trajectory to fire up onto Spanish Fort and Fort Blakely. So that was the extent of George Denham, my ancestors' involvement. So yeah, so Sam Howe, he's at Spanish Fort Blakely, and eventually they I think they were on occupation duty in Mobile, but then Sam gets discharged in 1865 at Vicksburg and makes his way back up to New Jersey.
okay.
I'm just
And
going to
so
take a
how
go.
long is he in New Jersey before he makes his way back to England? What's the
Um,
thing that makes him want to go back to the UK or England?
He apparently says he was invited back by a family member. So initially he set up in business with a New Yorker in a guy who was born in New York, and they set up a bag and trunk company in New Jersey. But they dissolved the company in 1872. They part company. It's quite amicable. And Sam allegedly he claimed that he'd been working as a lumberjack out in Michigan, with the fear of being attacked at night by the indigenous people of Michigan. Whether that's true or not, we don't know. But obviously, I have confirmed because I've obviously done my research that he had a business in New Jersey. Anyhow, he comes back and he marries a woman called Sarah Hill, and he joined Hill Brothers Cooperage, Coopers, which are based in Ford Street. And he apparently moves back to the house that he was born in 1848. So he married, so he joins the company of this cooperage, and he marries this woman called Sarah Hill, and then they have some children. And that's pretty much Sam Howe's story. Although Sarah sadly passes away and he gets remarried. They have a couple more children, etc. Do you want me to kind of fast forward because I'm sort of conscious of your?
What I'm going to do is leave Sam Howell there for the moment,
Okay, yeah,
and then we're going to talk about Henry in a moment. But I'm just thinking. So, like you said, he was in America at a young age. So
yeah,
chances are he actually had an American accent then.
Oh, I'm glad you thought that. Well, yeah, what's your point? Because that's
Because
what I've been thinking
he
about
wouldn't have
that.
had a Derbyshire accent by that
No.
age. Because I mean, when you're younger, you seem to take on, the same accent as other people. So
Yeah.
I would imagine, even though he's got this English heritage and his family's all from England, Derbyshire and Derby,
Yeah.
he probably actually had an American accent, I would imagine.
100%. And of course, as best as I can work out, he was the only child when they went across in 1850, this 32-day journey. He had some siblings that were born in the United States, and of course, there's a massive Howe family somewhere in the United States. That, of course, if I could find them, they could come to the dedication. But yeah, one thing that I think we're on the same page there, Dad. So he must have come back to England and he would have had an American accent. He was known for not just being this really kind of happy-go-lucky individual, but he also wore these very noticeable Buffalo Bill style hats. And again, these cold case investigations that you and I do when we follow these veterans, if you look at these pictures of Sam Howe among these London branch veterans, sure enough, he's wearing this Buffalo Bill style. It looks like a cowboy hat. And I was like, wow, just found this extra bit of information that kind of corroborates the fact that I thought this veteran was Sam Howe. He looks like him, etc. And then, of course, you look at the hat and you're like, yeah, I'm pretty much certain. But yeah, he would have had an American accent as well.
Wow. Yeah, and I can
Yeah.
imagine that's what attracted his wife at the beginning there, I'd imagine.
Yeah.
Because
Well, I'm
you're not
sure.
hearing that every day, are you, in Derby?
No. And the other thing as well, I think with these veterans, he claimed it served at Gettysburg. I'm never going to critique any of these veterans. If you're somebody's interested in your story, then yeah, you might embellish it a little bit. Yeah, I'd love to find the fact that if he really did serve at Gettysburg, as well, I don't want to do him a disservice, but that is that to be continued part of this story, Daz. I can't confirm it yet because we can't get his pension file. So it's
Well,
lost
you
some.
know John Davis, he'll find a way of
Yeah,
helping
John
us out.
Davis. John Davis of the
He's
London
looking
branch.
down.
He's looking
Um,
down on us. Yeah, he's looking.
let's talk about Henry McGuinness, his really good friend, and his experience. So
All right then.
tell us a
Well,
little, and again, we don't actually know whether this is him or not, but we're going to
yeah.
say that this is Henry
The
McGuinness.
reason why,
What
okay, let
research
me,
it
yeah.
points to.
I mean, you think about the job that I used to do, Daz. I mean, all my research, let's get you in the job. My job is to prove or disprove. And if what I'm going to say to you is that man that you see in that picture has never, ever appeared in any other pictures of the London branch of American Civil War veterans. Number one, fact number one. Fact number two, it was taken on July 4th, 1916 at the YMCA in Tottenham Court Road, which sadly no longer exists, so you and I can't do a then and now. The London branch had a banquet reunion there, and as I say, press articles confirm that two veterans from the Midlands, which is where Henry lived, came down. Henry McGuinness was a good friend of Sam Howe, and if you look just behind that veteran that you see there, behind his left shoulder, is Sam Howe. So all I'm going to say, these are the facts, your worships. And so, yeah, best guess, I think that's Henry McGuinness. So born in 1839 in Finsbury, North London, to a Jewish family, and his surname was actually Magnus. And in 1844, his mother unfortunately passes away. His dad remarries, and then unfortunately that wife passes away, and I think his dad remarries again in 1848. His father became a free man of the city of London. He had a shoe business, and by all accounts, quite successful. Henry had several siblings, one of whom eventually settled in Sydney, Australia, and became quite well known amongst the Jewish community there. Henry chose a different path. In 1857, you can see records of him landing at Castle Garden in New York. And eventually, he describes in his pension record that he became stranded in New York in 1859. Well, that's true to some extent because in 1860 we find his name and profession as a tailor, and it says Henry McGuinness, so it's spelled Maginnis, and he's in an almshouse in New York City. So it kind of corroborates what he said about being stranded in New York City. Fast forward, and a year later, he's in Hartford, Connecticut, and then in 1861, he also joins the 65th New York Infantry, and they were chasseurs. Can never say the word chasseurs. Is that the right word? Starts with a C. Chouards. They weren't Savars. Chasseur. I'll have to look at the uniform.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah, but they wore a very distinctive uniform. They served with honour throughout the Civil War, and you can pretty find the 65th at most campaigns. Gettysburg, as I said to you earlier, Fredericksburg, Petersburg, the places that you took me to, So I do have some letters because in later life, Henry talks about serving under McClellan, etc. Now, Sam apparently, in his latter years, referred to a diary that he wrote about the Civil War. Now, somewhere in the UK, if it hasn't been destroyed by the Blitz in World War II, it's Henry McGuinness's diary. Wouldn't it be great to find that?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, anyway, all we can do at the moment in our cold case investigation is use those people who were around him at the time. Now, I've got two letters, one of which describes a soldier who served in Company K at the 65th, who joined the same year as Henry, his feelings about General McClellan. So what I was thinking, Dad, is if you want this letter was written less than a year after Henry had joined, and they're on the James River in Virginia. And this guy called Charles Crockett, who's in Company K of the 65th, describes the heat, picket duty, and his feelings about General McClellan. And again, I just want a bit of a shout out. Spared and shared. William Griffin, great website. This is where I managed to get a transcript of his letters. Do you want me to? I'll read it up to General McClellan. So this is, he was writing to a friend of his called John Gifford. So he writes on June 22nd, 1862, Harrison's Landing on the James River. So, having a little spare time, I thought I would devote it to interest you a little. The heading of my letter will tell you our present location. We have had quite easy times since coming here, but we are still on the front. We have picket duty once in a week, but it's very easy. And the rebels don't seem disposed to molest us yet. Their pickets are very quiet. We are entrenching and making our position as strong as possible. Many a farm has this Army of the Potomac almost ruined by the pick and shovel. We shall probably make no demonstration here until reinforced. Our force is too small. We have suffered terribly in making this rear movement, though not willingly acknowledged. We can hold our present position, I think, as we are under cover of our gunboats. Were it not for them, we could soon be driven out of here or captured. The weather here is very warm, thermometer ranging from 90 to 100 degrees Fahrenheit. We do not have but one drill a day and one dress parade. These duties are done morning and evening, and during the heat of the day we lie still in the shade. There are some new regiments that have long drills every day. I tell you, it is tough business. It is terribly hot. It makes men hate their country and everything else. Still, I suppose it's an absolute necessity, or it would not be done. Now, this bit I really like about McClellan, because I've heard you talk about him, Daz, and I only know of McClellan really through you. So, okay, so this is what Charles Crockett thinks of McClellan. A great many have lost confidence in General McClellan. I have visited many different regiments since we fell back and in them, and all I hear is him denounced more or less. They blame him a great deal, some for one thing and some for another. He does not give us facts when we have been whipped. He calls it by some other name. Before the retreat commenced, dispatches came to Hooker and were published to his men that we were we were driving the enemy on the right, when in fact we were falling back all the time. We had been cheering all day at what we supposed to be big things in our favour. At night we went to bed feeling highly elated at the prospect of soon being in Richmond. And about 12 o'clock we were called up and orders came for every man to get ready for a march and in light marching order. The sick ones were ordered to start immediately and were ordered to destroy everything that we could not carry. So he kind of goes on, and he's quite disparaging, really, of McClellan. He talks about the retreat. He says was made in good order. We whipped them at every point during all that 7 days fighting. If our loss was heavy, theirs must have been terrible. Our artillery made terrible havoc among them, and I wish I could explain to you so that you could understand it as I have seen it, but it is impossible. Now, Charles does write a couple more letters, but I've got, let me just have a quick look there, newspaper accounts of Henry's time when after he re-enlists. So he serves his 3-year term to December 1863, I think it is, or 1864. But basically, he re-enlists. So they've fought at Gettysburg. They've served at these other sort of campaigns. And so you've already seen what Charles Crockett's experience of the Civil War are. And he, as I say, writes further letters and he's trying to get out of it. So you've got, while we haven't got Henry's actual account of the battle, because he does provide lots of references to it later in life when he's back in Derby. But he does make brief references to it in his pension file. He said that he changed his surname to McGuinness, MAGINIS, when he enlisted because his Jewish parents didn't necessarily agree with him serving in the Union Army because of his Jewish faith. I'm kind of taken out with a pinch of salt because other factors might suggest that. And so he re-enlists and he eventually gets shot at the Battle of Cedar Creek. Do you know much about Cedar Creek?
Not super knowledgeable about it.
Okay. Now, I'm not going to give you numbers, but all I can tell you is that I don't know if I'm going to show it to you now, Daz, and I know your listeners, if they're just listening on your podcast. But, this is my kind of Bible. It's a great book, and you're not going to see it on there, but it's called Regimental Losses of the American Civil War by William F. Fox. Now, Tom, who does a lot of work for us in the Monumental Project, was going through this left, right and centre when we was at York History Festival. What I can tell you, in the entire Civil War, the 65th obviously sustained casualties, but their biggest casualty numbers were sustained at the Battle of Cedar Creek. And during the night, and I found a great letter, but I won't read it to you. It was a press release. A reporter wrote about the battlefield in the evening after. Now, Henry got wounded in action at Cedar Creek. It was just a graze. He got a Confederate round in his left shoulder, which scarred him for his rest of his life. But he came out pretty much unscathed, certainly physically. Mentally, I'm going to probably posit that he had PTSD, and he certainly wasn't a fan of war by the time he's returned to Derby. But yeah, he gets injured, the battlefield at Cedar Creek, who got a reporter, found this great article that I'll be including in our dedication. But it describes it was quite the moon was shining down, and you could see these ghoulish, dead soldiers lying on a battlefield. That you could hear the sounds of pick and shovel as people were being buried. It was just a horrific scene. And as I say, look at that image there, but the 65th sustained their highest casualty count there. So this is the second year of Henry's enlistment. As I say, I'd take my hat off to him. The fact that he'd seen, Gettysburg, Fredericksburg, all those actions in the final year of his service. So yeah, beg your pardon. So he re-enlisted in December 1863. And he actually enlisted on Christmas Day, 1863. And he serves his service with the 65th honourably, and eventually, obviously, gets discharged. He gets his pension later in life. But that's really Henry and the Civil War. I'm going to take a gulp of my drink, if you don't mind, Daz.
Yes, go for it. And so again, he doesn't go straight back to England, does he? Like Sam.
No, he doesn't.
There's a bit of time in the US first, doesn't he? So tell us about that, and then we'll go on to how he ends up back in England.
So his version of events are that he came back to England in 1867. You know the job I used to do, Daz, and obviously I like to verify the facts. And as far as I can tell, he didn't come straight back after the Civil War. He may have served in a regular army. That's a part of the research we've still got to follow up. He then started quite a successful tailoring business in Hartford, Connecticut, and then he relocated to Massachusetts. And again, by all accounts, he immersed himself in the Catholic community there and was quite well regarded. Now, it's possible, and I'm not going to again tarnish his reputation, God rest his soul, but it's possible that he got into debt, and that was a reason for his returning to England. So he came back to England probably about 1872, I beg your pardon, 1874, 1875, according to the research I've done. And then he settled in Birmingham, and then you can see Birmingham there on the map. And then he relocated east to Nottingham. He's on the 1881 census, still spelling his surname as McInness and describing himself as a married tailor born in New York. Well, obviously that's not true. And then that's when he then relocates to Derby, and he meets a woman called Bertha Harris. And he and Bertha's got some children by a previous marriage. Her husband had passed away. And he basically immerses himself in the community in Derby. And, as I'm still doing ongoing research, but he became quite well respected. He became part of Derby's Democratic League. He spoke quite eloquently, and he also spoke about his thoughts on war and the cost of war, how people can become morally disengaged during wartime, in terms of who their enemy are, etc. And I get the sense that, his wartime experiences in the Civil War shaped his late life kind of approach to the thoughts of war, etc. And that's really it. So in terms of him and perhaps the shadier part of his life, I get the sense that he was born the same year as John Davis, and as you know, John Davis he was a born again Christian. His earlier years were involved in some pretty outrageous drunken criminal behaviour, but he found God and that changed his life. And I get the sense that perhaps when he met Henry McGuinness in the YMCA at the YMCA in 1916, that he perhaps saw something of himself in that man. But obviously, let's just move back a little bit. So Henry He lives with this woman, Bertha. She sadly dies in 1906. She gets a headstone. His name's not put on a headstone when he passes away. And then he marries, I think it's about 1912, 1913, a woman called Harriet Green, who was very much younger than him. And she is described in different paperwork in his pension file as a woman of loose morals. So, so there's a
Depends
suggestion
on
that
what she's like.
yeah. So there's a suggestion that she marries him for his pension, and then if we fast forward, so we've got July 4th, 1916. You got there you go, that fantastic photograph. So you go. You've got Sam Howe wearing his Buffalo Bill style cap there,
Wow.
and in front of him, so in front of Sam Howe's left, you've got John Davis. And to the right of John Davis is the man that we suspect is Henry McGuinness. As I say, I've never seen that guy holding a walking stick in any other photograph. So it's
I
my
think you've
best.
managed to name most of the people.
Yeah, yeah. As time goes on,
Yeah,
it's
you
always
sort
it's
of
never
know.
going to stop, Daz. And so
And
when I
so is this so they're both living in Derby. Is this the first time they
yeah,
meet? How the hell can you well, I know Derby's probably a big place, but so they
yeah,
didn't come across each other in Derby then.
no. So what had happened
Weird is
is,
that? That's strange.
well, to these again, Henry McGuinness. When John Davis founded the London branch in September 1910, he obviously did a lot of promo in the press. And 2 days after the London branch was formed, Henry McGuinness wrote to his local paper and said, I served in the Civil War. Is there any chance that we could somehow create a veterans organisation? So he must have heard of the London branch. It's not. It's got to be more than coincidence that 2 days after the London branch was formed in September 1910, Henry's writing. So how they ended up, Sam and Henry, and that definitely is Sam, at this London branch reunion, I don't know, but all I can tell you is that Sam Howe became their 124th member. Henry didn't join their rolls as a member, but lots of their members were never included in their role numerically. You've got George Haven Putnam, who claimed to have met well, he didn't claim he did meet at Abraham Lincoln, his first public engagement. Well, Henry McGuinness claimed that he knew he'd met Abraham Lincoln when he was campaigning in 1860, and blow me down, Sam House in newspaper articles claimed that he knew Abraham Lincoln quite well. Anyhow, let's stick to the photograph. So this is
But
1916.
also, if you notice, he's not actually wearing a medal as well. So that
No,
shows you that he's. I mean, the majority
has
of them
he?
are look like they're wearing some form of
Yeah,
medal,
yeah.
and
That's
they look very
interesting.
similar to our
Yeah,
recreation of the London branch medal that you recreated.
that's a good
Um,
bit of detective work. The
but
absence.
he's not wearing anything from what I can
No,
see there. So maybe
no.
again, he's just,
He's
you know,
turned up.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, as I say, Sam Howe definitely did join, and I've also found Sam Howe in other pictures for London branch. There's a picture of him at Waterloo Station a year, I think it's a year after John Davis passed away. Now, I say I'm going to suggest that in Henry McGuinness, he was a Londoner, born in 1839, led a similar life to John Davis. And I think John Davis saw little of himself in Henry because Henry passed away on November the 3rd, 1916, in the workhouse infirmary in Derby of bronchitis and asthma. And John Davis decided to go to Henry's funeral. Now, it's a fair old trek, as you've already intimated, haven't you? So John Davis is not a young man, and he travels all the way from Bermondsey up to Derby to pay his respects to Henry McGuinness. Now, in that press piece that you've got there, Daz, it also again he eventually changed his surname to McGuinness. I think that's possibly because he left behind a trail of debt, and so he was obviously trying to conceal his identity. But the Nathaniel part of it, that was his middle name, and his father was called Nathaniel Magnus as well.
Also, I think
Uh,
what's striking me is the fact this is only the 9th, sorry, the 10th of November. So
mm,
he hasn't known these guys very long. So he's obviously made an impression on John
yeah.
to travel up to Derby to
Mm.
go and pay. And again, I know he's another veteran, but must have left a
John,
mark on the rest of the London branch.
I
To
definitely think if it, John Davis didn't he couldn't go to all, these veterans' funerals. Obviously, I will always look at the research for the third book that I'm writing confirms that he would go. But he definitely went the distance on this one. This is what stands. Yeah, why would John Davis go to Henry McGuinness's funeral? Because by that rationale, you and I know that I've discovered over 600 veterans of the Civil War who died in the UK. Well, by that rationale, John Davis could have gone to them all because he didn't know them all, but he knew Henry McGuinness. And I think Henry McGuinness made an impression on Sam, as I said, I'm sorry, on John Davis, because his thoughts on perhaps war. I think Henry had lived, perhaps hadn't always, walked in a way that he was. I'm trying to think of the words. He hadn't always been a very righteous man, shall we say? But I think he got to, as old age, he got to see a different way. And as I say, he was quite well regarded in Derby in terms of his public speaking, etc. And I think that he obviously met Sam Howe through the Derby Imperial Veterans Association. And of course, when Henry passed away, they did a big parade from 99 Cambridge Street. We're going to go there, Daz, by the way. We're going to do a bit of an info because that still exists. It's a terraced house in
oh, nice.
Derby.
Yeah.
Yeah, 99 Cambridge Street. Yeah, so we're going to go. But they did. So he passed away, and they did a big parade, and obviously he was interred at Nottingham Road Cemetery. And again, testimony to the fact of perhaps Sam Howe's, character. He paid for Henry's funeral, and as I say, Sam was quite involved in the Imperial Veterans Association of Derby. He was the vice president for a time. And I think we haven't covered it yet, but he met the King in 1921, who'd spotted Sam's medals. So yeah, so 1916 November, and
Yeah.
there you go.
Yeah.
This is perfect.
Yeah. So obviously, again, so he's paid for his funeral, but like you said, in 1921, he's going to be in Derby when the
Yeah,
King visits, and that's George
yeah.
the Fifth, I believe. Is that right?
I think you're right. Yeah. So just to quickly finish on Henry and his relationship, if you like, with John Davis, and perhaps another indication of the fact that John Davis wasn't in good health because he died in on January 5th, 1917. So, we're talking, we're 2 months after he goes to Henry McGuinness's funeral in Derby, John Davis passes away. Yeah, that's some mark of a person's character that
Yeah.
they would go the extra mile. So if we park Henry very nicely and politely. And as you say, the next slide, I think, is 1921. You've got Sam Howe, and they've got this big show that takes place with I think it's called the Royal Show in Derby. And you've got the King coming into Derby. And of course, you've got all the dignitaries on show. Blow me down. Sam Howe may have claimed that he knew Abraham Lincoln quite well. Let's just say that might have been a campfire tale, but it's irrefutable that he met the King, and the King commented on Sam's medals. And I think the King said, like, which side did you fight? And I think Sam said something like the right side,
Oh
which was
wow.
quite a nice touch. Yeah, so that's 1921. What have you got for me on the next slide?
Okay, so he is going to, again, as we've said, he is the last veteran, is he? So he
Yeah.
lives out his life, doesn't he?
Hmm.
But obviously he does pass away.
Yeah.
Uh, and again, tell us about, again, him being the last veteran.
Well, he is in 1928. Arthur Smith of the London branch wrote an article that was published in lots of newspapers, predominantly in the States, about the last 11 remaining London branch members on the roll. That was one press piece that confirmed Sam was a London branch member, and since that time, obviously, I found his name on the roll as the 124th member. So the Charles Wright, who served on the USS Vandalia, he died in 1933 and is buried in Kent. And so he was the last veteran of the London Branch to lay a memorial a wreath in Memorial Day at Abraham Lincoln's statue. So from 1933, God knows what Sam Howe was thinking. You know, he was the last London branch member with obviously verifiable service. He became by the time of his death on Boxing Day, 1940, World War II started. He is the last veteran that we know of to die in the UK with verifiable service. Now, in the US, you can find, go Google them, lots of lists of lasts. The last Union soldier, the last Confederate soldier, the last general, the last Medal of Honor recipient, all these lasts. But absent from these lists of lasts is Sam Howe, the last soldier of the American Civil War to die in the UK. And I think that's an absolute travesty, Daz. You know,
Mhm.
my take on a lot of the Civil War narratives that it focuses on the bigger stories, the bigger battles. There's not going to be very few stories on Egypt Station. There's lots of stories on the last veterans, etc. Find Sam Howe about, and you'll rarely find Sam Howe mentioned because the only authors of that story are you and I. So I think it's an absolute travesty, and I think that's what underlines to me what's so important about this dedication on October the 4th. You know, it's a double dedication, which makes it important. You've got two friends in life, and they are both interred together in death. And as you know, the headstones are going to be placed side by side, you know, as a little nod to their friendship and service. So, yeah, just going to take another gulp of my drink.
And you did miss one big thing, I think, about Henry McGuinness's death, and that was what he left in his will for his.
Oh my God, how could I forget that? I was
Yeah, and I
leaving.
think you did for. I know you've told me a few times about this.
Yeah,
Let's tell
so,
everyone about
all
that
right.
quickly before we wrap up
Yeah, okay.
the podcast.
So Harriet, his wife, a woman of ill repute and lack of sobriety, um, I think she's angling at getting, the widow's pension. But when you check the pension file, the consulate write to the pension bureau and basically explained that Henry's dying wish that his wife Harriet should be given 5 shillings so she can buy a rope to hang herself round her neck. I thought, doesn't it say it all? Whether she did, I don't know. And I don't know if she ever benefited from the pension because I can't see any follow-ups in the pension file. Normally, you get a widow that makes her claim, but there's nothing in his pension file. It's quite a big pension file, but there's nothing from Harriet in there. So maybe that was her swan song. Maybe that was the end of her involvement with Henry, but she never got the pension that she was after. And I mean, she obviously didn't buy the rope to hang herself around her neck, but I thought it was quite a nice touch. These pension files, you often see some weird comments and stuff like that in them, but I've never seen that. But it does give you a sense of what Henry felt about Harriet. So, yeah.
Okay, so again, you find out about, like you said, you found out about Samuel first, then you find out about Henry.
Yeah.
what was it? So when you found out about them, how did you find out about where they were buried, and what was the state when you found out about where they are, which is it Nottingham Road Cemetery, Derby?
Yeah, yeah.
Do they have headstones or not, or
They
what's
know,
the state of
yeah,
their graves?
we can't get headstones for veterans that have a headstone. The
Right.
Department of Veteran Affairs, Memorial Services, Department of Veteran Affairs will only provide a headstone where there is no marker that bears these veterans' name. And curiously, when even though Sam Howe died in 1940 and left a widow, life gets in the way, and his family never sought to put his name on, if you like, the headstone in the family grave. He's buried with his wife, and I don't think he's buried with one of his sons who died at a young age. Same thing with Henry. He must have really loved Bertha. He got a headstone for her. And even though Sam paid for Henry's funeral and even the casket, which had a little plaque honouring his old comrade, you had the US flag above the grave, you had John Davis doing a special prayer, a eulogy, etc. Neither veteran had a headstone. And I started to join the dots because, as I say, I knew about Sam Howe more, and then obviously got the connection about Henry, and that's when this sort of the idea that, well, maybe if neither have got a headstone, what about let's do a double dedication? Obviously, you and I have spoken about it, and the fact that they're buried in the same cemetery made sense to me. And we've got Scott Jarvis, Melissa Coons, who are honorary members of the descendants of the London branch, have both helped us with this project. You've got the cemetery staff as well, who've been very supportive in this as well. So, what we now, in 1 month tomorrow, we'll be stood by these veterans' graves and paying our respects. And yeah, the last veteran, will Sam be noted in, academic pieces outside of the UK by authors in the United States as the last veteran? I think it's really important. It's an important part of the story of the American Civil War. It's an important part of Brits involved in the Civil War. American Civil War and UK history.
There you go. Yeah. And again, to reiterate, ladies and gentlemen, the last veteran in the UK
Mm.
that we know
Yeah,
of.
there are. I mean, I think once I said to you, "Dad's to be continued." I think
Yeah.
I've said it a few times. I mean, we have definitely got the last widows to die in the UK, and I think you're talking 1944, perhaps even later. But Sam Howe is last in many ways. He's the last London branch veteran with verifiable service. He's the last Civil War veteran to die in the UK. So there's a number of lasts there.
Yeah.
There's a number of lasts there, and I think that's why status is so important in the story of the Civil War.
And again, people are going to be listening to this before the dedication, and they're going to be
Hmm.
listening to this hopefully after the dedication. But for those that are listening before the dedication, if people are interested and they want to get involved in what we're doing and even maybe attend this dedication, what's the process there?
Well, you can contact us on Civil War UK Monumental Project at gmail.com. As well as I do, Daz, it's our mantra, is to be really inclusive. It's what John Davis did. And it's what we will do as well, but it's obviously a respectful event. So if people come along, it's to honour these two veterans, and the focus will be on them on the day. But yeah, we want people to come along. We've got the Mayor of Derby coming along. We're hopefully getting an honour guard from the US Air Force. We've got representatives of the local Jewish community. We've got quite a lot of living historians coming along as well, which I think is great. So in many ways, this dedication is really from in comparison to our previous dedications, should hopefully have a lot of people. We're still waiting to get any contact from the American embassy, but we normally have some as a representative there. We've got the American Legion, and curiously, the American Legion almost took the baton from the London branch in terms of Memorial Day. So when Charles Wright died in 1933, the American Legion continued to lay wreaths in London at Lincoln statue. So it's quite nice to have the American Legion at the dedication, because they're almost like brothers in arms with the London branch. So yeah, if you want to come along, Civil War UK Monumental Project at gmail.com. Email us and you will be most welcome to be Henry and Sam's family just for one day. The day is all going to be about we. We gather. We are. There's no them and us. It's all going to be about we.
And I noticed you mentioned family there, so you can't find any relatives.
No. So it seems that lots of Sam Howe's descendants ended up in Australia. Scott Jarvis, who's been supporting us with a lot of the back office work, may have found a descendant of Bertha Harris, who was Henry McGuinness's partner, and that would be great. It's sad with his dedications. We're talking nearly 100 years where we can't find his descendants. We really, really try, and of course, there's lots of things that have been lost. We can't find the descendants, and as I mentioned already, we don't know where Henry's memoirs are. If they've survived the Blitz of World War II in Derby, where are they? We'd love to find them.
Yeah, awesome. And I will say this as well, ladies and gentlemen. So we won't be streaming the dedication live, but it will be recorded. So if you can't and you do miss it, don't worry, you won't miss it. It'll be on my YouTube channel, American Civil War and UK History, under the playlist hashtag The Monumental Project. But also during the day and during that weekend, like Gina said, we are going to go and film a little bit of content. We're going to walk in the footsteps of these two guys, bring you some of that content too. Also, on behalf of Emergency Civil War, I will be bringing you content through their platforms as well. So go and check out emergencycivilwar.com. Big shout out to Emergency Civil War and all those guys. And of course, again, on our own platforms as well, American Civil War and UK History and the Monumental Project, Monuments for UK Veterans and American Civil War Association. There'll be lots of stuff coming out on there too. Anything you want to finish on, Gina, before we wrap up here?
No, I mean, I'm looking forward to, I love doing these dedications, Daz, and I will just say, hot off the press, within the next week, I should be sending an application off for another veteran who's got plenty of descendants, because two of them are members of descendants of the London branch. They died in Gosport in 1913. They remember 93 of the London branch. I'm not going to say their name, but they definitely saw some action, and it's going to be hopefully the dedication we do from 2026. So in 2025, we went north to Derby, and in 2026, we're going to be going south to Hampshire. But watch this space, yes. Raising monuments and awareness too. But as long as there's a breath in my body, we'll be doing these dedications. Even though I get a bit stressed from them, Daz, I will say. Very stressed.
They are fairly stressful, I suppose. Though, aren't they? It's a lot of planning, but you don't realise a lot of planning that goes into it.
Yeah.
But also, again, another shout out to that Facebook group that you was mentioning there.
Which one?
The share one.
Oh, yes, William Griffin. Yeah. Spared and shared.
So I'll put a link for that in the description, just so people want to go and see what that's all about. And then it's a great place.
Yeah, Griff has helped me out with transcriptions of some of my books, transcriptions for newsletters, and he's a whirlwind. And I only got to meet him briefly, and I'm talking seconds, when when I did the dedication for James Henry Cleggett in Chicago last year. Griff came along, made him obviously acknowledge me, and I was like, oh my goodness. But because we were so busy with the dedication, I didn't get to speak to him. And then dedication was finished, he went, and that was it. So a bit of unfinished business there, to be continued.
Nice. And all that is left to say, ladies and gentlemen, is cheers.
Cheers.